So that's a segue that he's taking us into the story about armor. We are going to talk about that for just a second. First, I want to mention a point connected with what he just said here, that Cyrus McCormick was unique in that he was an industrialist and an inventor. Carnegie, of Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie, actually came out and said, when he heard about the Bessemer converter, where you blow air through the molten iron, it oxidizes it, or removes the carbon and turns it into steel. It oxidizes it and removes the carbon, I believe, and turns it into steel. Some people wanted him to look at this idea or whatever, and he said, pioneering don't pay. So he's just going to run good old-fashioned iron mills, and these other people can do this newfangled technology. But then he saw 150 tons of steel turned into 150 tons of pig iron turned into 150 tons of steel in half an hour, and he was converted. So some of the best industrialists are even short-sighted. They aren't perfect. It's just that they're good at what they choose to do, and the free economy allows them to do that. Now let's talk about Philip Danforth Armour. Armour made $2 million in 90 days. Now this is in the 1860s. He was able to do this because he read the newspapers closely, with special attention. He was watching the battles between the Union and the Confederacy, the rebel armies. Now, he wasn't a military man, but, quote, Armour saw a victory for the Union at least 3 months sooner than most other gamblers in commodities. Shortly after the Battle of Gettysburg, when pork was quoted at $40 a barrel, Armour went to New York City and offered to sell pork for future delivery in any amount. Hundreds of traders who thought that they were very shrewd fellows bought pork from futures from Armour by the thousands of barrels. Pretty soon came the great string of Union victories, one after the other, as Grant started slugging. The price of pork sagged with each new victory. Armour was able to buy for $18 what he had agreed to deliver at from $30 to $40. Many traders were ruined altogether. Armour's profits permitted the brand new firm, Armour & Company, to begin business with no loans from banks and no mortgages. Good job. But he had to have the $90,000 invested to begin with, didn't he? And he had to have the foresight to believe that he was right. He had to have the foresight to say, I'm putting this $90,000, it's everything I've got. If I lose it, that's it. If I win, though, this will be fantastic. So he had the foresight. Now, people who have the foresight to take advantage of things in the economy like that should be allowed. Next, we're going to be taking a look at John D. Rockefeller. We have here the Rockefeller Billions by Jules Abels. Then back to Stuart Holbrook, Standard Oil, which is what Rockefeller created. A few pages on that. Okay, we now take from Rockefeller Billions by Jules Abels. Okay, starting on page 5 in the chapter titled Oil, There's Your Fortune. Vivaldi in the background, of course. Throughout the 2 decades before the Civil War, attention was turning to the bluish-greenish, viscous, malodorous substance called petroleum, oozing from the ground in various places along the Appalachian Range. I've mentioned in videos before that until Americans created ways to use this, it was a disgusting, smelly, sticky substance that bubbled up out of the sand in the Middle East, and in various other places like Oily Creek in Pennsylvania. Mankind had been acquainted with it in a vague way for centuries. According to legend, pitch made from it was used to build Noah's Ark and the Tower of Babel. It was used in everlasting fires of Mideast cults, and the American Indians used it for their sacred fires. The only oil burned for illumination in Roman times was olive oil, which gave a weak, smoky light. The first knowledge of the distillations of petroleum came from Arabic culture about the 8th century of the Christian era, and it spread in later centuries. So it wasn't until the Arabic Golden Age that petroleum was first distilled and used. So this is kind of a hint. This is like the Greeks had the steam engine, and then we forgot it for 1,000 years. The Arabs discovered during their Golden Age, hey, this crappy crap in the sand can actually be used for something. They actually discovered ways of distilling it, In 1776, General George Washington bought a tract of land in Virginia, in what was later the Kawana Valley of West Virginia, close to what is now Charleston. Washington noted in his journal, quote, "This tract was taken by General Lewis and myself on account of bituminous spring which it contains, of so inflammable a nature as to burn as freely as spirits, and is nearly as difficult to extinguish." What exactly he means there, I don't know. Some sort of spring comes out of the ground with flammability to it? So, I don't know. That's fascinating. In 1783, General Benjamin, so that's the end of the quote. In 1783, General Benjamin Lincoln told in a letter of the troops stopping at a spring in western Pennsylvania, quote, "They collected the oil and bathed their joints in it. This gave them great relief and freed them of rheumatic complaints." Now, that's not true, or else we would use Vaseline to, relieve arthritis, but let us continue. The troops drank freely of the waters, and they operated as a gentle purge, medicinal quality. They drank freely of the water. Good natural stuff. The troops had stopped at what soon appeared on maps as Oil Creek, O-Y-L, not far from the first oil well. For years, oil was considered a dreadful nuisance. It so fouled up streams that cattle could not drink, and when carried on to pastures in floods, it ruined grazing lands. It was a damn nuisance. Those who complained the most were the borers for salt water, used in the manufactures of salt. The presence of petroleum on the ground was supposed to be a sign that there was salt underneath, but when the borers hit salt water and it spurred up mixed with petroleum, they were exasperated. Damn it, we've struck oil again. At first they abandoned such wells in disgust. Then it occurred to them that the oil might be separated, since it floated on streams. Indeed, if the water was dumped onto cisterns or culverts, the oil came to the surface and could be skimmed off. In fact, so much was thrown into one stream along the Kanawha that it was called Greasy Run. So, at first they were exasperated by the oil, but then they found that they could put this salt water in a cistern, and the oil would separate and come to the top, and then they would just drain the oil off the top and let that run away, and they'd have their valuable salt water left over. They could dry that and get salt, and they could get rid of this worthless oil. Here and there people were finding uses for the oil. In 1847, Samuel Kyer of Pittsburgh, in partnership with his father and brother, bored wells at Tarentum, close to Pittsburgh. At 400 feet, the well brought up water mixed with petroleum. It seemed that the well was ruined, but Kyer knew that the oil had qualities that made it burn, and that it might be a lubricant. He sent some to a Philadelphia chemist, who gave the first expert opinion, advice to distill it and sell it as an illuminant. Kyer established a refinery with a 5-barreled still, and in 1858 he was selling it in New York as, quote, "carbon oil that will burn in the ordinary coal oil lamps." Gradually, man was moving to the final discovery. Another step, though it does not appear as such, was the Kyer decision to bottle petroleum and sell it as medicine. Now, how is that another step towards the final discovery? Indians were known to use it as medicine. The good old natural Indians. They used it as medicine, so it must be medicinal. Kyer's wife was suffering from consumption, and her doctor prescribed American oil, which Kyer examined and found to be identical with his petroleum. So he says, "The doctor gave you this? Let me see this. Shit, this is the stuff I sell." Seneca oil, or American oil, could be used as a liniment. Liniment, right? I don't know, liniment. But when 3 teaspoonfuls of it were taken 3 times a day, it supposedly could do wonders for cholera morbus, liver complaints, bronchitis, and consumption. Kyer bottled his petroleum and sold it through drugstores all over the country as Kyer's petroleum or rock oil. An unexcelled remedy, quote, "celebrated for its curative powers," end quote. He sold a good deal of it because petroleum was so malodorous that everyone was sure that it was a powerful medicine. Now, an odor is a strong smell, but something that's malodorous